Y'all. When a black man from South Carolina submitted a DNA sample for routine genealogical analysis, when he was just trying to trace his family history like millions of Americans do every single year, when the scientists at the University of Arizona received his sample and ran their standard tests, and what came back wasn't just a family tree, but a discovery so profound, so scientifically significant, so historically earth-shattering that it rewrote everything we thought we knew about where human life actually began.
When his Y chromosome turned out to be so ancient, so genetically distinct, so far outside every known human lineage that researchers initially thought their equipment had malfunctioned. When the science confirmed that this black man from South Carolina was carrying genetic material estimated to be over 338,000 years old, older than the oldest known human fossils ever discovered, older than every other human Y chromosome lineage ever documented, older than Homo sapiens as we currently define the species. That's not just a genealogy result. That's the universe revealing something about black people that white supremacy has spent 400 years trying to bury. And the implications are so profound, so deep, so foundational to everything that most people still haven't processed what it actually means.
Hey, this is Hidden Black Files, and today we are going exactly where the peer-reviewed science leads, regardless of who gets uncomfortable with the destination. If you've been hearing about Albert Perry's DNA discovery and wondering what it actually means, if you've been trying to understand why this finding is so significant, why it's been circulating in academic circles and in conversations about black identity and human origins, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Because what we are about to break down is documented, peer-reviewed, published in the American Journal of Human Genetics, verified by researchers at the University of Arizona. This is not speculation. This is not Afrocentric fantasy. This is science. And the science is extraordinary. But before we get into it, I need to say something real to you. Hidden Black Files exists because information like this, the kind of information that makes a black child look up from a textbook and say, "Wait, nobody told me this," has been systematically kept from the people who need it most.
I built this channel because I grew up learning black history in fragments, pieces, carefully edited versions of a story that, told completely, would change how every black person in America sees themselves. Albert Perry's story is one of those pieces. And y'all, when I tell you what this man's DNA revealed, you're gonna understand why they buried it. Subscribe to Hidden Black Files. Share this video. This is exactly the kind of story this channel was built for. Now, let me give you the complete, documented facts, because Albert Perry's story deserves to be told in full.
Albert Perry was a black man from Beaufort County, South Carolina. According to research published in the American Journal of Human Genetics in 2013, Perry submitted a DNA sample to a genealogy project. When researchers at the University of Arizona analyzed his Y chromosome, the genetic material passed from father to son through generations, they found something that, according to Dr. Michael Hammer of the University of Arizona, should not exist. Perry's Y chromosome belonged to a haplogroup so genetically distant from every other known human Y chromosome that it initially registered as an error. The researchers checked their equipment. They ran the analysis again. They checked it a third time. The results were the same every time. What they had discovered was unprecedented. A Y chromosome lineage that had diverged from all other human Y chromosomes approximately 338,000 years ago. 338,000 years ago. Let me put that in context for you, because the numbers are almost too large to process. The oldest known Homo sapiens fossils, found in Morocco, dated by researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, are approximately 300,000 years old. Albert Perry's Y chromosome lineage is older than those fossils, older than the oldest physical evidence of human existence that science has ever found. According to Dr. Hammer's research, this discovery points to one of two possibilities. Both of them are extraordinary. Either modern humans are significantly older than the fossil record currently indicates, which would rewrite the entire timeline of human evolution, or there was interbreeding between early Homo sapiens and an archaic human population we have not yet identified, which would mean that living black people today carry genetic material from a human lineage so ancient that we don't even have a complete name for it yet. Either way, the genetic material that Albert Perry carried and passed down to his descendants represents the oldest known human Y chromosome lineage ever documented in the history of science. Sis. Bro, you hearing me? Now, here is where it gets even more significant, because it doesn't stop with Albert Perry. According to the same research, Perry's haplogroup, designated A00, was subsequently found in a small population in western Cameroon called the Embo people, which means the oldest known human Y chromosome lineage on this entire planet traces directly to sub-Saharan Africa, not to Europe, not to Asia, not to the Middle East, to Black Africa, to the people that white supremacy has spent centuries calling primitive, inferior, uncivilized, behind, less evolved. The oldest human genetic lineage ever discovered belongs to them. Let that marinate. The implications of this discovery are profound, and they don't stand alone. According to research from multiple genetic institutions, the African continent contains more human genetic diversity than all other continents combined. This is not a controversial claim. This is the scientific consensus. This is what the Human Genome Project found. This is what geneticists across the world have verified and published. African populations carry genetic variants that exist nowhere else on Earth. The reason is simple once you understand it. Homo sapiens originated in Africa and spent the vast majority of their evolutionary history there before any migration to other continents occurred. All that time, all those hundreds of thousands of years, African populations were accumulating genetic diversity that the rest of the world's populations never developed. Here is the part that rewires your brain if you let it land properly. When a group of early humans migrated out of Africa approximately 60 to 70,000 years ago, they carried with them a small slice of the genetic diversity that existed on the continent. That small slice, that genetic subset, is the ancestry of every non-African person on Earth. Every European, every Asian, every Native American, every Pacific Islander. All of them carry a portion of what exists in Africa. But African people carry the full spectrum. In the most literal, documented, peer-reviewed genetic sense, African people are the original humans, and every other population on Earth is a branch of a tree whose roots grow in Black Africa. No cap. Now, let me stop here for a second, because this is exactly why Hidden Black Files exists. This information was published in 2013 in a prestigious scientific journal, verified by researchers at multiple major universities. It is not hidden in some obscure academic paper that nobody can access. And most people have never heard of it. Most Black people have never heard of it. A Black man from South Carolina carried the oldest known human Y chromosome lineage ever documented. And his name is not in a single history textbook. It is not part of the standard curriculum on human origins. It is not taught in biology classes across America. And you want to know why? We'll get there. But first, if this channel is giving you something you have never been given before, something real, something documented, something that shifts how you see yourself and your history, support the work. Subscribe to Hidden Black Files. Share this video with someone who has spent their life being told the wrong story about who Black people are. Leave a comment below telling us what you're feeling right now as you hear this. Because the only way to fight suppression is distribution. And distribution starts with you. Now, let me set up what this means in the broader context of Black identity, because Albert Perry's discovery does not exist in isolation. It is part of a growing body of genetic evidence that is fundamentally reshaping our understanding of human origins and the unique position of African and African-descended populations in the human story. The Khoisan people of southern Africa, known for their distinctive click languages, carry haplogroup A, which was the oldest known human Y chromosome haplogroup before Perry's discovery was made. Their genetic variants are estimated to have diverged from other human populations over 100,000 years ago. They represent one of the oldest continuous human lineages on Earth, and they have been living in southern Africa this entire time, accumulating genetic history that the rest of the human population does not carry. According to research from the University of Pennsylvania and multiple other institutions, the genetic diversity found in African populations is so extensive that two African people from different parts of the continent can be more genetically different from each other than either one of them is from a European or Asian person. Read that again. Two black people from different African countries can be more genetically different from each other than a black person and a white person. That is how vast African genetic diversity is. That is how much evolutionary history is contained in African populations, compared to populations that have only existed outside Africa for 60,000 to 70,000 years. All those differences that white supremacy built an entire civilization's worth of hierarchy around, skin color, facial features, hair texture, body type, are surface variations sitting on top of a genetic foundation that, at its deepest level, is African. Everything non-African is downstream. Everything.
Because this is not just science. This is about what the science does to a person when they finally hear it. There's a young black man, call him Marcus, a biology student in Detroit, who discovered Albert Perry's story while researching human genetics for a class project. He said something that has stayed with me.
I've been told my whole life that black people are at the bottom, that we're the least evolved, that we're the most primitive. And then I find out that the oldest known human Y chromosome lineage traces to a black man, that African populations are the most genetically diverse on Earth, that all non-African people are a genetic subset of African people. And I thought, they've been lying to us. Not just about history, about biology, about genetics, about who we actually are. That reaction, the intellectual liberation that comes from discovering suppressed truth, is exactly what the suppression was designed to prevent. Because a black person who knows this cannot be talked into believing they are inferior, cannot be convinced that their history begins with slavery, cannot be persuaded that their people were at the margins of human civilization rather than at its origin. The knowledge is an antidote, and antidotes get buried when the poison is profitable. Let me give you the moral audit, because this needs to be said. Psalm 139:14 says, "I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." Albert Perry's DNA is fearfully and wonderfully made. The genetic diversity of African populations is fearfully and wonderfully made. A 338,000-year-old Y chromosome lineage that traces directly to sub-Saharan Africa is fearfully and wonderfully made. And the God who made it did not make it to be suppressed, minimized, or erased. He made it to be known, to be celebrated, to be understood as the foundation of the human story. Hosea 4:6 says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." The knowledge of Albert Perry's discovery, of African genetic diversity, of the foundational position of black people in the human story, this knowledge has been suppressed. And the destruction that comes from that lack of knowledge is visible in every black child who has been taught to see themselves as inferior, as primitive, as less than. Restoring this knowledge is not just intellectually important, beloved. It is spiritually necessary. Now let's talk about the suppression, because this is where it gets real. The out of Africa theory, The scientific consensus that all modern humans originated in Africa has been established for decades. The extraordinary genetic diversity of African populations has been documented for decades. Albert Perry's discovery was published in 2013, and yet most people, including most black people, have never heard of it.
So let me ask the question plainly. Does the scientific establishment value the communication of important findings or not? Because if they do, why isn't Albert Perry's name in every biology textbook in America? Why isn't his discovery part of the standard curriculum on human origins? Why did a finding that fundamentally reshapes our understanding of human evolution get a brief moment in science media and then largely disappear from public conversation?
It was not disproven. It wasn't found to be flawed. The research stands. It has been replicated. The Mboyo people of Western Cameroon carry the same haplogroup. The lineage is real. But the implications that the oldest known human lineage traces to a black man, that African populations are the most genetically diverse on Earth, that all non-African people are a genetic subset of African people, those implications are too threatening to the racial hierarchy that Western civilization has been constructed on. That hierarchy that justified slavery, that justified colonialism, that justified Jim Crow, that justified every system of racial oppression that has been deployed against black people for 400 years. That hierarchy depends on the idea, explicit or implicit, that black people are at the bottom of something, that the direction of progress runs away from Africa, not toward it, that civilization is something black people received rather than something black people originated. Albert Perry's DNA says otherwise, and so they buried it. Now, let me be specific about the pattern, because this is not a single incident. This is a system. From the whitewashing of ancient Egyptian civilization, the ongoing, persistent effort to separate the achievements of one of the greatest civilizations in human history from the African people who built it, to the dismissal of African mathematical and astronomical knowledge, to the erasure of black inventors from American history, to the suppression of Albert Perry's discovery, the pattern is consistent.
When black people demonstrate excellence, the system suppresses it. When black people make foundational contributions, the system minimizes them. When black people are revealed to be at the origin of something important, the system buries it. Not because the evidence is weak, because the evidence is too strong. They bury the things that threaten the lie. And a 338,000-year-old Y chromosome lineage traced to a black man from South Carolina whose ancestors came from Western Cameroon is the single most powerful piece of genetic evidence in the history of science for the foundational, original, irreplaceable position of black people in the human story. They buried it because it's too powerful. We're digging it back up.
Here's your community charge, fam. Write this down if you need to. Know Albert Perry's name. Know that his Y chromosome lineage is estimated to be 338,000 years old, older than the oldest known human fossils in 2013. Know that the same lineage was subsequently found in the Embo people of Western Cameroon, tracing the oldest human genetic legacy directly to sub-Saharan Africa.
Know that African populations are the most genetically diverse populations on Earth. Know that all non-African people, every European, every Asian, every person of non-African descent on this planet, carry a genetic subset of what exists in Africa. Know that the oldest known human lineage traces to Black Africa. And teach it. Teach it to your children. Teach it to your cousins. Teach it to your neighbor who has spent their whole life being told a different story.
Because the genetic evidence says the opposite of what the system has been telling us. The genetic evidence says that when you look at a black person, you are looking at the living embodiment of the oldest human lineage ever documented. The genetic evidence says that black people carry the oldest, most diverse, most foundational genetic heritage on Earth. The genetic evidence says that we were not at the margins of human history. We were the beginning of it. Hidden Black Files is this channel because information like this is exactly what this channel was built to restore. Not to invent, not to exaggerate, not to make claims that go beyond what the science says. To take peer-reviewed, published, documented scientific research that has been allowed to disappear from public consciousness because its implications are too threatening to a system built on Black inferiority, and give it back to the people who need it most. Albert Perry was a Black man from South Carolina. He submitted a DNA sample, and what came back rewrote the human story. The science is documented. The research is peer-reviewed. The implications are profound. And the silence around this discovery is the loudest possible confirmation of its significance. Share this video, not because we're making claims beyond the documented science. We're not. But because suppression only works when distribution fails. And distribution starts with you, fam. Subscribe to Hidden Black Files. Leave a comment. Tell us what this did to you. Tell us what you're going to do with this information now that you have it. Because our people deserve to know who they actually are. Not the version the system gave us. The real one. The genetic one. The 338,000-year-old one. Peace.